I'd like to revisit a story I worked on in the late 80s. It has informed much of my work since, and much of the backstory resonates today. In January 1988, writer Ron Arias and I were asked to travel to Nicaragua to do a story on the children victims of the war between the Sandinistas and the Contras. Actually, the Sandinistas and the Reagan administration. The Sandinistas had overthrown the Somoza family in 1979. The Somozas were dictators in the mold of Saddam Hussein, terrible to the Nicaraguan people, but good to U.S. business. Nicaragua is the largest country in Central America and with the richest natural resources. And good to our military. Among other things, we had a strategic staging area there. And probably most importantly, they weren't communists. The Sandinistas were Marxist socialists, not communists, but received aid from Cuba and Russia. And even though their main objective was to improve the lives of the people of Nicaragua after the cruelty, oppression, and exploitation of the Somozas, they were our enemies and we wanted to get rid of them. The Contras were formed, trained, fed, clothed, armed, and directed by the Reagan administration through the CIA, with the express purpose of returning Nicaragua to the good old days. However, the war wasn't going well for the Contras. Horrific human rights violations were coming to light. U.S. public opinion was against further involvement, and Congress cut off military aid to the Contras. But that did not stop the Reagan administration. Among other nefarious schemes, they started selling missiles to the Iranians who were at war with Iraq and used the profits to fund the Contras. Some of us remember the Iran-Contra affair. Many of my fellow speakers weren't born yet. There was also very likely a weapons for drug programs with Panama's Noriega that was reported by John Kerry's Foreign Relations Committee and a number of other sources. However, Reagan's Justice Department declined to delve into these allegations. 11 high-up Reagan officials were later convicted of a number of crimes related to the Iran-Contra affair, including Secretary of Defense Caspar Weinberger. I guess we remember Oliver North. Neither Reagan nor Vice President Bush was implicated. At the end of Bush's term, President Bush's first term, he pardoned all 11. I'd like to read part of the International Human Rights Law Group testimony to Congress during the Contra funding hearings. The group found a distinct pattern of abuses by the Contras, including attacks on purely civilian targets, resulting in the killing and maiming of unarmed men, women, and children. Premeditated acts of brutality, including rapes, beatings, mutilations, and torture. Individual and mass kidnappings of civilians for the purpose of recruitment into the Contra forces. Assaults on economic and social targets such as farms and cooperatives, and kidnapping, intimidation, and even murder of religious leaders who supported the government. The report went on and on. Ron and I left New York wanting to get our material together as quickly as possible so we could return with a multi-page story that could be closed and on the newsstands before an approaching congressional vote on more Contra aid. We arrived in Managua, and after being refused entrance into the Fernando Vélez País Hospital, we found a driver, Eduardo, an ex-Sandinista soldier with an old Russian Jeep, and left for Nicaragua's northern war zone. The 160-mile drive north to Matacabo was eerie. The highways and dirt roads were almost deserted. The few vehicles we saw were crammed with passengers. The embargo that was imposed on Nicaragua when the funding for the Contras was cut off effectively shut off the flow of gasoline into the country, among many other necessities. The CIA started mining the ports in 1983. Once we reached Matagalpa, it was not hard to find maimed children. Elda Sanchez was on her way to market with 51 other villagers crammed onto the East German truck. The truck drove over a landmine supplied by us. 48 people were killed or maimed. Elda's father lost a leg, her aunt lost both legs. In Fantasma, we met 14-year-old Domingo Jimenez. He also lost his leg to a landmine. After Eduardo saw how we worked with the people, he told us he had been a driver for the chief doctor in the children's ward in the hospital in Managua. We immediately turned around and headed back. We knew fresh wounds would communicate the horror of this war much more graphically than healed wounds. 5-year-old Bayardo Orozco was sprayed by shrapnel from a landmine or grenade. His father told us he would probably never see again. Kenia Rodriguez, 7, another landmine victim. Yalitza Galeano was caught in a crossfire when she was playing in her front yard. Shot in both her legs, her left shin was shattered. Because the country is nearly bankrupt and because of the embargo, there are very, very few medical supplies in the hospital in the country. The only painkillers, the few painkillers that are in storage at the hospital are being saved for the most extreme cases, almost always with soldiers. The nurse is pouring rubbing alcohol onto her open wounds. This picture would never be shown in an American newspaper or magazine, but I think it is really important to see what a 4-year-old leg looks like when it's been hit by bullets. Ala Luz Flores is 7 years old. She was just shot in the left buttock. Dr. Zamora said she was very lucky. The bullet did not hit the bone. If you look at that nurse's expression, I don't think she thought she was very lucky. We left Managua confident we had the makings of a powerful story. But on the way back to New York, I could not shake the feeling of disappointment I had with myself. I was complicit in the carnage that I had just documented. I had done nothing to protest the policies I knew were wrong. However, we did feel good about the story that was laid out. The editors were very happy with the work. We thought it would communicate some of the pain we experienced. People magazine had the highest readership, not circulation, but pass-on readership in the country, around 35 million readers per week. We were eager to show 35 million Americans the war that the Reagan administration was waging against the Nicaraguan people, the children of Nicaragua. We were happy we beat our deadline. But the story did not close. A very high-up executive at Time Inc. said that we had produced an unbalanced piece. It was unfair to the Contras. How did we know who shot Yalitza or Aluz? Maybe it was a Sandinista landmine that blew off the Kenia's legs. A few minor revisions were made. Quotes were obtained saying that nobody could know whose bullet hit which kid. Both sides were to blame. And with these very few minor changes, the story closed, went on the newsstands, but after the congressional vote. I was very happy that the funding was turned down. I'm not used to talking and pushing my finger at the same time. Fast forward to Israel, the West Bank and Gaza. Today, I do not have nearly enough time or knowledge to discuss the morality of an incredibly complex situation that goes way back before the Holocaust. I simply want to give you the opportunity to look into the eyes of a number of beautiful children, all of them sitting on a huge powder keg, and the match is perilously close to the fuse. This part of the wall is between the West Bank and East Jerusalem. The children, the Palestinian kids, have to find a checkpoint, often 45 minutes from where they would usually cross, to get into East Jerusalem to go to school. These kids so much reminded me of the kids that I see around here. That soldier, I think, I'm not positive, I think he was in some way making a joke at the expense of this little girl. There has been a lot of abuse of, and they're 18-year-old soldiers, 20-year-old soldiers, and we know how our soldiers act. But still, there's been a lot of abuse of kids and adults going through these checkpoints. Many, many Israelis want an equitable solution to the problem they're in. That woman in the yellow jacket is a member of an organization called Watch, and they have volunteers, the Israeli volunteers, at almost every checkpoint all day long, just kind of as a presence and letting these soldiers know that somebody's watching them, and if they do something wrong, everybody will know. This little girl was very frightened going past all these guns. These kids look so innocent to me. She's got a little Nemo bag. So once they get past the wall, they just go to school as normal. They get on a school bus and go to their East Jerusalem school. The children in Hebron have a little bit more difficult passage to make. They go through these bars. They go through a metal detector. I really enjoyed watching these kids argue with the soldiers of why should we go through this metal detector. There have been many demonstrations and the kids protesting against the soldiers about having to go through the metal detector every day. This is the almost completed section of the wall between East Jerusalem, or Jerusalem, and Ramallah. The Israelis are looked upon by many people as being kind of the villains, but they are under incredible stress. There's something like 4,000 missiles shot from our rockets shot from Gaza towards different cities and kibbutzes in Israel since 2005 when the Israelis vacated Gaza. And they have war/terrorist/emergencies drills regularly. These kids are about to go onto one, and the government sponsors all this stuff. Although I think 1,400 Palestinian kids have been killed since 2000, 120, 130 Israeli kids, they still are under constant pressure. So a soldier is explaining to them the process they would have to go through if there was some kind of emergency. Emergency medical people come in. Some of the kids are acting as the wounded survivors. But this is not a game, and this is not fun. This is very, very serious for them. Soldiers show them how they have to check all the vehicles for bombs. Like I said, it's not a game. I saw a lot of upset kids and worried kids. The fire department comes to show how they can evacuate the roof. And the only happy kids I saw was as their fellow classmates were being rescued off the roof. Well, this is in Hebron, and this is at a girls' school. And Dua is 14 years old, a 14-year-old Muslim teenager. And I just enjoyed watching her play. In school, like any American teenager, The dramatic poetry reading class. The kids leave the front door of their school and walk maybe 200 yards down, and then they go down these ancient crumbling stairs when it's wet. It's very dangerous for the little kids. Right outside the door is a concrete stair that goes to the street, but there is a Israeli settlement school directly across the street, and the Israelis don't want the Palestinian kids walking in front of the settlers' school, and so there's the concertina wire going across the stairway. They can't use it. The very, very busy Palestinian market street that leads to these schools has been closed down permanently to keep crowds of Palestinians from going in front of their school. And the kids use the empty space. They play in it on the way back. Those two European girls you see in the background are observers. There have been incidences that I've actually seen on videotape of the settler girls who look like beautiful 60s hippies with flowers in the hair, throwing stones at the Palestinian kids. The government of Israel is really good about caring for their kids. I think I said that 4,000 rockets have been shot into Israel from Gaza since 2005, and this is a kibbutz that is within rocket range. Qassam rockets are glorified firecrackers, really. They very often they don't go where they're aimed. Very often they end up in the desert somewhere, but still there's incredible tension, and they are having to have these rocket drills regularly. The government sends counselors out to work with the kids, to get them to speak about their fears and the stress, and so that they don't keep it all bottled up inside of themselves. But these are all games designed to somehow let the kids express what they're feeling that they wouldn't normally be talking about. The counselors are not making this deadly serious. They're making it really fun, and they're making it really easy for the kids to talk. These are all part of the games that are designed to make it easy. As we were leaving, these kids were gathering in the courtyard and doing folk dancing. This is an Israeli-Palestinian bilingual school in Jerusalem. All the lessons are taught in Arabic and Hebrew, and these kids, who are supposedly enemies, are best friends. The blonde is Israeli, the two other girls are Palestinian. This is a really wonderful school. And these classes are totally integrated between Palestinian and Israeli kids. And you never see, well, I never saw cliques of like you see in American high schools. It's a very, very competitive game on the playground, and the kids were really playing hard, but again, not Israelis against Palestinians, Israelis and Palestinians against Israelis and Palestinians. In my website, I have the first groups of these pictures. There are two Israeli stories, two Palestinian stories, and one story of Palestinian and Israeli kids going to school together. I've not put in pictures from Gaza because I want to find some. I want to go back. It took us a long time to get into Gaza, and we were only in there for maybe 2/3 of a day. And we had this kind of tour all through Gaza, ending up in Rafah, where the border between Gaza and Egypt was open for a day. So this is a school in Gaza, except one or two photographs. They did not photograph the streets of Gaza. Gaza City, they look like war zones. shelled buildings, debris everywhere. For this talk, at least, I just wanted to be inside the classrooms with the kids. This is a science experiment, a very simple one. The teacher fills a glass of water, puts a paper on top, turns it over, lets go, and the air pressure keeps the paper up. But the kids are incredibly engaged, and they want to take part. All of them did. And they were really interested when their classmate was doing it, and they were really happy for him when the experiment worked. This is a girls' school in another part of the same city. They were walked through a war zone to get to school, and they are so well dressed and so well behaved. And it's not like they're quiet. I mean, they're really kids. It was really fun being with them. And when they left school, they did not want to leave. They really were open to me. I mean, they really wanted to come and be around me. They had to get pushed out the door. This is a UN school in Gaza, collateral damage. It was closed after it was shelled. This is a classroom that was shelled accidentally. 2 or 3 kids were killed, handful injured. This could happen so easily anywhere in Gaza, anywhere in Israel, West Bank, or Gaza, actually. And these kids really are in danger. Thank you.